Hi everyone, and welcome to the preview show of the FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022 as well as the AFC Asian Cup China 2023 joint preliminary round 2 stage, and we will be talking about all the teams that are involved in tomorrow's draw. And yes, 40 teams are involved altogether, hoping to qualify for the World Cup that's only taking place for the second time in Asia. My name is Reem, and I will be taking you through today's very interesting discussion. And joining me are two gentlemen who are no strangers to Asian football. They are indeed fine gentlemen, as I like to call them. Former Singapore international John Wilkinson, welcome to the show, as well as former Warriors FC midfielder Roshan Rai. Now guys, I'm just gonna dive deep into this one, okay? We're just gonna go straight into it. Let's talk about the teams that are, of course, in the draw tomorrow. We'll focus on the teams that are lower ranked first, pots 3, 4, and 5. What do you think their chances are of progressing?
I think they will feel that it's an opportunity for themselves to get some experience playing against some of these bigger nations in Asia and look to get competitive match experience, match time under the belts. I think realistically it is going to be challenging for these sides to eventually qualify. But with the way it's done right now, the way qualification is done right now, and I'm a fan of this because it gives lots of Asian sides, that competitive game experience, and they get to stay in qualification for a little bit longer. So even if they don't make it into the latter stages of World Cup qualifying, they've still got the Asian Cup to look forward to in that expanded format. So, I think it's a wonderful change in terms of that qualifying format. Big fan of it. And, I think, with some of these sides, like I said, it's just about, getting all that game time under the belt and getting the experience.
We could be a little bit surprised, though, with some of them. Philippines for one. We've seen that in the Asian Cup, the recent Asian Cup, they're able to hang in there with the big boys. They lost narrowly to Republic of Korea. And they've got Stefan Schrock, who's a good catalyst for them. He can play at right back, so he can stifle attacks. You just feel with a few of these sides, they can look a little bit stale. With the Philippines, the core of their side's on the wrong side of 30. With India as well, they're still going to be looking to Sunil Chetri to kind of lead the line and lead them as a team. A few of these sides are in transition, but we might be surprised with a few of the performances. I'm looking to the Philippines to hang in there a bit.
Yeah. All right, Roshan, how important is it then for them to, have a positive approach, regardless of their opponents? What if they end up going up against teams like Japan or Korea?
I think obviously, when you look at players and when you think about going into these matches, positive approach has got to be number one. It's a given for these teams, for these players going into it, and essentially with some of the lower ranked sides, the pressure's off. In a sense, yes, they want to try and give their best. You put pressure on yourself as a player, but the whole the surrounding of it, the media pressure, the pressure from the fans and the public perception is that it's more on the bigger boys to go out and perform and go out and qualify for the next round. So these sort of low-ranked teams can go into it and say, yeah, we want to try and surprise perhaps. And there is potential in there with some of these sides to surprise. We saw, again, I go back to the Asian Cup and the expanded format, and teams coming in and giving a really good go of it and surprising. I mean, Vietnam are a side that are on the up in Asia, and they've got some fantastic talented players in that squad. So I look at some of the teams. Thailand will want to try and get themselves back in there as well, and even a side like perhaps Malaysia to come in and surprise with their young players coming through. There's potential in there to try and perhaps pull off a few surprises. And Turkmenistan, another side that's been in the Asian Cup, has got that experience, has got a squad that's nice and settled. So there are possibilities for all these teams to perhaps bring a few surprises in there.
So John, you've played in some of the biggest stages with the Singapore national team. How important then is home form, in terms of qualifying?
It's absolutely key. It really is, because having played in World Cup qualifiers, you're not really sure what the conditions are going to be like when you go away from home. So home form is key. You need the fans really to be on top of the opposition for you. You need to harness that. The build-up is so important. You have to have a positive mindset, and Roshan's touched on that already. And I think at times you have to understand that every time you get the ball, you're not going to be able to just go on and score. Sometimes you have to keep large parts of possession. You want it to be as hostile for the away the away team as possible. And the best way to make it hostile is to keep hold of the ball, make them run around, make them move about. And when you go away from home, of course, you've got to grit your teeth, dig those heels in and try and get what you can. And understand, in World Cup qualifiers, it's fine lines. It could be a saved penalty, it could be a decision that goes your way, it could be a clearance off the line. You're going to have to ride your luck.
And Roshan, you've of course monitored Asian football very closely in the past couple of years. How much has it progressed, and do you think the gap between the aspiring nations as well as the developed nations, is that getting closer?
I think so. And again, I know I sound a bit like a broken record here, but I got to go back to the Asian Cup and just some of these teams that have come into the competition and put themselves on that stage, put themselves out there and put in good performances. And if I even go back to the last cycle of qualification, Singapore somehow came away with a 0-0 draw away in Japan against one of the big guns of Asian football. So there is obviously that potential to surprise. And if we touch on things like home form and things like that, when you look at teams, Indonesia, with the support that they have, that incredible level of support they have, they will try and use that to their advantage, and they can absolutely surprise teams as well. They got Simon McManamy in there, someone we've worked with. He's been there for a bit now, and he's had a bit of an opportunity now to impart some of his ideas. So it'll be interesting to see how they go in that cycle under him, perhaps. And Bangladesh are a side that are coming up, in the rankings as well under Jamie Day, and they performed quite well against Laos in the first round of qualification. So I do, to answer your question, yes, I do see that gap sort of shortening now, getting closer and closer. And it's a credit to some of these teams. Some of these nations are stepping up their game, stepping up their level. And it's about the development of the players coming through as well. And I think, that's very important for some of the developing nations in the footballing world.
John, if we were to, zoom in on individual performances, I think this is a great time for a lot of players to shine, isn't it? And, looking back, maybe players like Omar Karbin, who has sort of played a big role in his team and his nation, Syria, to qualify. They had their claim in the AFC Cup, and then they almost missed out on the World Cup. Maybe you could throw a few names who you think might shine this time around.
Well, I mean, who leads the line for Iraq? 19-year-old Mohamed Ali. Lots expected of him. He can be quite volatile, which is a good thing for a striker, line-leading striker. He's an absolute physical specimen. He showed little inklings of what he's capable of in the Asian Cup. And I think there's more, like I said, he's only 19, so there's definitely more to come for him. And also Kang Hai for Vietnam. He's, early 20s still. Beautiful left foot, it's like absolute wand at times, can score set pieces. He can really shine for his country. I do think, though, if he's going to get better, he needs to make a step over to play maybe in Japan for one, or maybe even in China or Korea for one of the sides there, for him to progress. So those two names in particular really stand out for me. For the Philippines, Stefan Schrock, he's the one that they'll always look to. And as I said, for India, Sunil Chetri is always going to be the guy that they go to, and with his experience, his class, his knowledge, and his calmness in front of goal. There's a whole plethora of names you could go through, but Mohamed Ali, for me, I think he's the next superstar of Asia.
Roshan?
I think John mentioned India, Chetri, but I like Anirudh Thapa in central midfield. I thought he had a very good AFC Asian Cup. And then, you focus on some of the big names as well, the players that really get you excited. Could we potentially see, Takefusa Kubo making the Japan squad for qualification? He's just earned his move to Real Madrid. Will he get an opportunity? That remains to be seen. And then Nakajima, who was, unfortunately for me, one of my favorite players in Asia, but missed out in the Asian Cup due to injury. He's coming back into the Japanese side and adds a lot of quality.
The other one, Rosh, as well, Kento Misao, who you and I like a lot.
Well, yeah, we'll see if he makes that squad.
Yeah. Because he wasn't in the Asian Cup, was he?
Exactly. So there's several players. Estelahi from Iran is a personal favorite of mine. He controls things in central midfield for me, and he's absolutely wonderful to watch in those positions. Azmoun, can he carry on with his career? He's had a great season with Zenit St. Petersburg in Russia. Can he carry on into qualifying? Kwon Chang-hoon, who's also been unlucky with injury. unfortunately for him, over the last couple of years or so. Hopefully he can, start to stake a claim and get some regular game time here. So plenty of talent, as we touched on, plenty of talent to look forward to.
Yeah, definitely. All right, gents, we will be focusing on the remaining 16 teams in pots 1 and 2 in just a bit. But first, let's take a quick look at the highlights of this year's AFC Asian Cup. It is indeed Asia's time, and we have been talking about pots 3, 4, and 5 early in the show. Now we're going to be focusing on the top 16 teams. So, gents, maybe you could start off by walking through the nations that are involved, as well as your expectations of them. Maybe, Roshan, you can start.
Yeah, I think, when you look at pots 1 and 2, and if I focus on pot 1, I think, you look at the big boys of Asian football and the sides that will be expected to go into the next round of qualification. And the sides that will be looking for, obviously not just Asian Cup qualification, but looking to qualify for the World Cup as well. And it's going to be competitive, it's going to be tough, and it could throw up a few interesting fixtures, with some of the sides that we've touched on. If you travel away, and we've spoken about home ground advantage for some of these teams, it could be some tricky opposition in there for some of the big boys. And it's always interesting, we often talk about styles of play, we often talk about how teams set up. It will be interesting to see how these teams sort of get on in those situations, and how those sides that are coming up against these bigger nations, deal with that threat, deal with some of these teams. And there's just interesting storylines across the board here. I mean, we've touched on new coaches coming in with some of the lower ranked teams. We've got new coaches coming in with some of these big boys in Asia as well. Mark Wilmots is there with Iran now, after they were so successful under Carlos Queiroz. And you're wondering now, what sort of style does he implement again with this team? How far can he take Iran? Can he take them a step further? So there are these challenges for new coaches coming into these sides, and can he take them to that next level? Will be interesting to see. Someone like Bento, who perhaps came under some, I would think, unfair criticism from certain sections of the public for Korea's performance in the Asian Cup. I thought they were a little bit unlucky, and it's an opportunity for him as well to sort of just try and develop their game and take it the next step. Graham Arnold with Australia, can he push Australia on moving forward? Felix Sanchez with Qatar, the Asian champions. And you're thinking, can they take that next step now as well? Develop that young side going forward. Can these players on the bigger stage perform? And we know they're going to be there in the World Cup, of course, but it's about pushing forward and trying to beat some of these bigger sides on a regular basis and developing their game. So, lots of interesting storylines in there. UAE, Bert van Marwijk was very successful when he was coach of Saudi Arabia. He's coming in as the head coach there. Can he just sort of rejuvenate this UAE team who've just been a little bit stuck at times? And I think, can he find that release for them and get them playing some good football that will make their nation proud?
John? Part 2, maybe? Focus on that?
Well, just pick up on a couple of points that Roshan said. He talks about UAE. I still feel that they're over-reliant on Omar Abdulrahman. He's still coming back from his knee injury, really, just getting back up to speed. You mentioned Australia. Australia, I feel, have to qualify. A nation, such a strong sporting nation with such a strong sporting history, they demand qualification again for the World Cup. And they're in transition, as Roshan mentioned. Got to look at China. China, again, I think they have to qualify for the World Cup with the investment that's been put in, the success in the Asian Champions League with some of with SIPG and Guangzhou, who have won that competition a couple of times. With Lippi in charge, he would demand qualification. He will. So they have to qualify. Jordan's on a slight downturn, for the last, let's say, 10, 15 years. They've been they've been on an upswivel. They've been putting in some really good performances, and they've been getting better and better. I think they've just hit that plateau right now. They're on their way down, so it's going to be interesting to see how they can combat that. But for me, China's the one you've got to keep an eye out for, because you're never really sure what you're going to get from them. You can get a side that's perhaps the best in Asia, and you can get a side that's just an also-ran. So it's going to be interesting to see how they line up, how Lippi sorts them out, because there's a lot to sort out there.
Now, Roshan, clearly success at this stage of the qualifiers is a catalyst for growth and progress for any team. But which sort of teams do you see, that could achieve this kind of success, a similar upturn throughout this?
Well, you're right there. It can serve as this give certain nations a little spring in their step and help develop their game back home. When I think of a side like Vietnam, perhaps, who have been on the up over the last few years or so, and the performances that they've put in, and they're getting rewarded because of the work that has been done there in terms of the youth development, in terms of the players that they're bringing through and the quality that they are bringing through. So it's nice to see teams trusting themselves to develop their own players and produce their own players, and then getting the rewards on the senior international stage. So, again, this is a platform for sides. I mentioned Vietnam there, but Thailand will, potentially, with the new head coach coming in, will want to try and impress as well in these situations. And, I've already touched on Malaysia trying to take the next step. Maybe World Cup qualifying is a bit too far for them, but Asian Cup has got to be the aim for a side like them, because they're producing good young players as well who are coming through into the senior ranks. So there's opportunities for all these teams, and you're absolutely right. It could sort of just take off, and it's fascinating to see someone like Cambodia, a team like Cambodia, perhaps how they do in this competition with Keske Honda in there, along with Felix Dalma. So like I said, it's just fascinating storylines, and once qualification kicks off, we will really start to see these things, come to fruition that we're talking about. And you're absolutely right. Yeah, it could prove to be a springboard for some of these nations to then take their next step
I think
in terms of their national development.
I think as well, for the nations, the developing football nations to take the next step. How about Qatar, who have won the Asian Cup? And there's still a lot of critics out there that say they were a little bit fortunate. They're a very talented academy side, because they all came up through the academy, the Aspire Academy there. But what a great opportunity it is for them to continue their progression in becoming the powerhouse, or one of the powerhouses on the continent. And a lot of their players, Al Moazali, to name just one, they've got a lot of players that potentially are looking to put themselves in a shop window for massive clubs, maybe in Europe, maybe bigger clubs in Asia. So it's a great opportunity for Qatar to really compound things and really force the issue and show that it wasn't just a one-off win in the Asian Cup. They can go on and just beat the big boys constantly and consistently.
All right, gents, all this talk has made me even more excited for the qualifying campaign that's about to take place. Once again, as always, thank you for your insights, very valuable. And for the benefits of our viewers at home, the qualifying campaign will take place in September and it will end in June 2020. In the meantime, for all the updates on Asian football, make sure you keep yourself posted by following us on our AFC digital channels. And yeah, that's it from us. That concludes the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care. My name is Reem, and see you soon.